Earlier this year, Cardinal Pell was acquitted in a unanimous decision of the Australian Supreme Court of child sexual abuse. He served 1 year in prison for a crime he didn't commit. In England, by contrast, a child abuser is elevated this week to become Archbishop of York. For a postmodern definition of what is child sexual abuse, let us go to the Tavistock Clinic here in London, where parents place their children in the hands of crypto-fascist so-called medical professionals who administer puberty suppressing drugs to them. They get to the Tavistock Clinic because they are encouraged to say if they are girls, that they feel trapped in a girl's body when they and or their parents or parent believe they should be boys, and vice versa. But to encourage children in what I regard as an entirely deluded belief, and then to lie to them, as the trans lobby at the Tavistock Clinic does, that the regime of drug medication which they undergo is easily reversible, is surely the extreme of child physical and sexual abuse. Treating children as subjects for a medical experiment. In Europe, we have had all this before. Nazi eugenics and the infamous experiments of Dr. Mengele, and right now in China, where Uyghur parents are aborting their children to comply with the dictates of the Chinese Communist Party. Two names stand out. One, Graham Linehan, an Irish comedian who should be canonised. When the Lottery Community Fund decided to donate £500,000 to the sex change advocacy group Mermaids, Linehan, who was defending J.K. Rowling at the time, who was also caught up in a trans row, tweeted the deadly words, "Men aren't women, though." And earlier, like me, he had compared the Tavistock Clinic practices to those of Dr. Mengele. But the exact opposite this week is provided by Stephen Cottrell, due to be, quote, enthroned as Archbishop of York. Earlier, Cottrell, as Bishop of Chelmsford, had supported mermaids against one of his priests, the Vicar of Fordham and 8 Ash Green, who was also a governor of the local Anglican primary school. Mermaids wanted to enter the school to propagandize and transition one of the children. Cottrell had forbidden the Reverend Parker from explaining the biblical position, telling him if he didn't like the Anglicans, he should leave. Constructively and unlawfully dismissed, the priest then resigned his living. As well as editing Armageddon Times, AT, I am General Secretary of a trade union, employees' representatives. So I offered to represent John Parker in an employment tribunal. Not long ago, I heard the Bishop of Chelmsford had been chosen by a French woman, Jolie Warren, acting for Boris Johnson, the ignorant, theologically ignorant anyway, Prime Minister. So this French woman has effectively usurped the royal prerogative, and Jolie Warren has appointed Stephen Cottrell to be the next Archbishop of York. In my last broadcast, I suggested we go to York next week on the day of this supposed enthronement to protest. I asked the DFLA, Democratic Football Lads Alliance, to come with me. I would have loved to have entered York Minster with the football lads to pull down this apostate, heretical, newly enthroned so-called Archbishop out of the pulpit, or at least to create a commotion. As the football lads didn't buy the idea, I contacted Pentecostal pastors here in Tottenham to give support instead. Shalombo, shalombo. But I didn't hear back from them either. So I have decided to cancel the whole protest. I find it difficult to walk more than 100 yards down this road, having been locked in by my children for weeks. So maybe I shouldn't go to York in any event. Child abuse is not just the actual act, but encouraging or standing by when somebody else does it. As for Cottrell, Stephen Cottrell, the Spectator reports he's also chair of a committee in charge of closing down unproductive Anglican churches, a bit like Dr. Beeching closed down railway stations in the 1960s. An elite of ecclesiastical apparatchiks like Jolie Warren and Stephen Cottrell will remain in possession of the buildings from which they will have effectively expelled the congregations. As who would want to go to York Minster when its pastor is complicit in child abuse? The new Archbishop has betrayed the Lord and needs to repent of his woolly thinking. I hope he will do so this week before his consecration. Those who touch the ark of God come to a sticky end. Let's not bother with him, football lads. Cottrell should go to his own place.